Internationally recognised bioenergy healthcare expert Michael O'Doherty is calling for a national conversation on educational reform, modern parenting and an integrated approach to childhood resilience as school avoidance, anxiety, learning and behavioural difficulties continue to increase amongst children in Ireland. Michael, who's based in Ennis, is calling for urgent change and he joins me in studio this morning. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning, Alan.
You were coming at this from a place of a lot of experience. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your decades working within the sphere of bioenergy healthcare?
Yeah, look, we started many years ago, 1990, first appeared on Late Late Show, and where we had come from former Yugoslavia, developing a whole new way of looking at the body and how it functioned. And at that time, we were looking at the bioenergetic system of the body, and of course, the science established that illness begins in this space. And of course, over the years, we became, for me personally, I became hugely interested, Alan, in children's health, because we could see so many children with different types of issues. But as time progressed, we could see that particularly emotional, mental health issues, society was changing, and we could really see the impact of societal change on children. And I've had a huge interest in this area for so many years. And so 35 years down the road now, we can clearly see the need for what it is that we're doing in our clinic.
And I've seen that appearance. I remember that appearance on the Late Late Show, and I coming to Gay Byrne in an audience in 1990, trying to explain this to them. They were scratching their heads almost. Has it taken years for people to buy into what you've been talking about?
I'll tell you, we were very fortunate with Gay Byrne at the time, because in a way he was nearly like God, Alan, that if Gay Byrne said something, well, then there must be something to it. And at the time, of course, they got the patients for us, and we treated them. And while we did treat them, we knew we were working with energy, but we hadn't the science behind it, because physics, quantum physics, non-local physics hadn't yet emerged as a really explaining that my intention affects your physiology, that we were made up of energy, that it was something that we needed to look at, of course, in cooperation with all other medical modalities as well.
This morning, you're talking about a lot of different issues that you see children, or issues or challenges that they're having to face, be it anxiety, school avoidance, and even the fact that their children, becoming teenagers. We've all been through it, developmental challenges as well. Maybe you can flesh that out a little bit for us, and why you're so interested in that.
Well, what really interested me was the increase that we saw, or we have seen. Number one, we see in 1980 you had 1 in 10,000 children suffer from some degree of learning or behavioural difficulty. We now see that 1 in 20, according to our own government's reports, and that's hugely, very sobering to think about that. And we see continuously appearing coming to our clinics a lot of young children, suffering with anxiety, can't sleep, and all of this. And we all know COVID contributed for sure hugely. So for me, what I wanted to look at was there research to explain why this might be a possibility. So one of the key areas of research that I looked at was, it was first of all, there was key research done by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente. CDCs, we all know what Kaiser Permanente are a very, they're an integrated medical model clinic that works in the States, in California. And what they were able to see in the mid-90s was that early childhood adversity could clearly link that to adolescent anxiety and depression, or indeed later life illness. And in Columbia, in the University of Columbia, for example, they were able to scientifically show that 80% of children who go through any degree of learning or behavioural difficulty or challenged psychologically or whatever, that there was a process that was disrupted in early childhood, and they called this brain pruning. So just briefly, Alan, what that really means is this. If you plant a flower or a plant in the ground, that you dehead it, you prune it, the brain goes through the same thing. So when we're born, our first 3 to 10 years, the brain prunes itself. And it's what we call a microglia, a tiny cell, janitor cell, that gets in and mops up unused synapses. Now that's scientific, but basically what happens is the brain goes through a pruning or a cleaning process. If that cleaning process doesn't take place fully, because of what adversity these children are exposed to, and we talked about COVID briefly, but then what happens, of course, is that the excess synapses influences how the brain develops develops. So what I'm really saying is this, that when we look at early childhood adversity, its impact on the brain, how children manage their lives going forward, it's all down to the brain. So what we're seeing now is that this is a brain problem. This is not an emotional problem. It's not a mental health issue. These are symptomatic of that brain pruning that didn't take place properly when the child was young.
Okay, so Michael, if say the scenario is a parent comes to you with a child that is having issues, maybe developmental challenges, is reluctant to go to school, and you inquire into more of the background,
yes,
find out that there was some sort of incidents or childhood adversity that has led to this. How do you go about not so much solving this, but helping the child to overcome these challenges?
Yeah,
can that ever be fully rectified?
100%. That's a great question, and Alan, it can. It can, because again, the science tells us it can. So that if we get the child early enough, early is best, but it's never too late. So the brain is continuously changing, and the brain for the adult doesn't change, or the brain for the child doesn't fully develop until 25, 27 years of age. So the whole idea is that with the brain, what we do is we know with any adversity that we go through as children, it overloads the nervous system. And what we have found working with the bioenergetic system in the body, that it's able to reset the nervous system. Once we then begin to reset the nervous system by working with the energetic techniques, then we from there we look at the nutrition, because nutrition comes into it and plays a major role. From there, we will look at possible retained primitive reflexes. So this again is a new area. You know, what we now know scientifically, that reflexes that should be integrated as children, that they're retained in the body. So therefore we advise people to get on a program where they can work with their children at home to reintegrate those primitive reflexes that may have been retained as a result of that early childhood adversity. And that could be in the womb, it could be in the type of birth or anything like that. And sometimes then we have the food plays a major role. I would work with very good gastroenterologists in this field who will clearly say the diversity of the food that children are eating has a direct effect on how the brain develops. Because, Alan, when we're born, we don't have enough genetic material to develop. We require the stimulation from the environment, from our parents, from our caregivers, from the food and all of that. And sometimes as well, sometimes it does require intervention with some medical care as well, because that forms part of it. Maybe CBT is involved. And in Cedar Sinai in the States, for example, that I was there a couple of years ago, they are using virtual reality. So we have tools, they use virtual reality to calm the anxiety of the patient and of children. And its effects are huge. So we have a huge amount at our disposal if we really look at the science, and we can really deal with this effectively.
In terms of helping these children, I mean, in terms of the how long it takes, I suppose, does it depend on each individual case and the level of adversity they experienced in their childhood?
Absolutely. I truly believe the way that what we have to do is, and rather than depending on as Helen McEntee said recently, depending on the teachers to collect data. We've enough data, we've enough science, we know where all this is coming from. We need to look at society and how society has changed. The family dynamic has changed. Both parents are forced economically to go out to work. Children are being put into creches. We're seeing that disconnect. Children in those situations who may feel abandoned for some reason or other, children, we know the brain is being influenced. So what we really have to do is to educate parents to understand how this can be resolved. One of the critical areas I believe, Alan, that this can that the government can step in here is that parents, that irrespective of the model, they need to be given longer time to be with their children when they're born. Minimum 18 months and slow ease back to work. Because if we can finance the early development of that child, in whatever way possibly, the long-term implications of that are huge. That's the road we need to go down if we want to resolve this. Because parents right now are out there and they're screaming from the top of the roof trying to get something done for their children.
I have to say, we're going to have you back in, Michael. There's so much more that we can go into on this. Just to finish, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, I presume you have a website?
Yeah, michaelodoherty.com, absolutely. And we'd only be too delighted to try and to help people to understand exactly why it is that children may be presenting with the problems they are today.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us this morning. As I say, really interested in what you do, and we'll definitely have you back. That's the Ennis-based bioenergy healthcare expert, Michael O'Doherty, with us this morning.